Mrs. Rollins, there is something else you need to know.
There is something else you need to know.
What did he do?
My name is Sabrina Rollins. I am 34 years old, born and raised in Colorado, and for most of my adult life people have described me with the same 3 words: calm, capable, and impossible to surprise. They were wrong about the last one. Before I begin, you should know something about me. I grew up in a family where business dinners sounded like court hearings and family vacations turned into strategy meetings. My father built Rollins Global Enterprises from a respected regional company into a national corporation. My older brother Justin inherited my father's warmth. I inherited his patience. By 30, I had become the youngest executive ever appointed to our board. I learned to study a room before speaking, to remember every number, and to never make a threat I could not carry out. Then I married Kenneth. Kenneth was charming in the way dangerous people often are. He could make a waiter feel important, make a banker feel brilliant, and make me feel like the only woman in the world. For years, I believed that version of him. Until one phone call at 2:07 in the morning. The ringing beside my bed was so sharp it seemed to cut through the dark. Outside our Cherry Hills Village home, a Colorado snowstorm was swallowing the streetlights. Kenneth had told me he was in Colorado Springs negotiating a real estate deal. I already knew that was a lie. I answered in the sleepy voice of a concerned wife. "Mrs. Rollins?" A hospital employee asked. "Your husband has been admitted with a female companion. There has been an unusual accident." I sat up slowly. "What kind of accident?" The woman hesitated. She explained that Kenneth and the woman had come into contact with a powerful industrial adhesive and needed emergency treatment. They had been found together in circumstances no married man could explain away. I closed my eyes. 3 days earlier, a canceled business flight had sent me home without warning. I had walked through my own front door carrying Kenneth's favorite candy, thinking I would surprise him. Instead, he surprised me. I heard a woman laughing upstairs, soft, familiar. I walked toward the bedroom and saw Kenneth with Maya, my brother Justin's wife. For several seconds, I did not move. I did not cry, I did not scream. Something inside me simply became cold. I left before they saw me. What I did afterward was reckless, angry, and dangerous. I tampered with something Kenneth kept hidden in his travel bag, turning his secret meeting into the humiliating emergency that now had a hospital calling me in the middle of the night. I am not proud of that choice, and what followed taught me that revenge can create consequences no one can control. But at that moment, all I could think about was betrayal. I dressed in a black suit and drove through the snow to St. Anthony Medical Center. When I entered the treatment area, Kenneth looked like a man watching his life collapse in real time. Amaya turned her face away from me. Kenneth tried first. "Sabrina, this is not what you think." I almost laughed. "Then explain what I should think." He opened his mouth, but no words came. I called Justin. He arrived 20 minutes later. The moment he understood what had happened, rage exploded across his face. Hospital staff moved between him and Kenneth before he could do something he would regret. Maya started crying. Kenneth started blaming her. Within seconds, the 2 people who had risked 2 marriages for each other were turning against one another. Then Kenneth panicked. Against the medical staff's orders, he tried to force himself away from the situation. The movement caused a severe injury. Doctors rushed in. Alarms sounded. Nurses pushed Justin and me out of the immediate treatment area. For the first time that night, my anger disappeared. What replaced it was fear. I had wanted humiliation. I had wanted the truth exposed. I had not imagined permanent injury. Before I could process what had happened, another voice cut through the hallway. "What have you done to my son?" Eleanor, Kenneth's mother, marched toward me with 2 attorneys behind her. She looked ready to tear the building apart. I was about to answer when I noticed the necklace around her throat. A diamond pendant. Custom made. I had seen the receipt in Kenneth's briefcase 2 weeks earlier. Nearly $500,000. I had assumed it was for another woman. It was for Eleanor. That one detail changed everything. Kenneth had been moving money without telling me. Eleanor knew enough to enjoy it, and if the money for that necklace had come from my family's company, then his affair was no longer the biggest problem in my life. It was only the doorway. I stepped closer to Eleanor. "You should ask your son where he got the money for that necklace." Her expression changed for half a second. That was all I needed. She knew. Kenneth had not just betrayed me as a husband. He had been stealing from me as a business partner. And suddenly I remembered the hidden safe in his study. I left the hospital before dawn. The snow was getting heavier, but I drove home with both hands locked around the steering wheel. By the time I entered Kenneth's office, I no longer felt like a betrayed wife. I felt like an investigator. And when I opened that safe, I discovered that my marriage had been hiding something far more terrifying than an affair. Inside Kenneth's safe were 3 black folders, 2 encrypted storage drives, a stack of foreign bank documents, and a sealed envelope with my father's name on it. I started with the bank records. At first, the numbers looked like ordinary corporate transfers. Then I saw the destinations, shell companies, offshore accounts, payments routed through firms I had never approved. Kenneth had been draining Roland's Global for years. My hands began to shake, but I forced myself to keep reading. The next document was worse. It was the deed to my parents' estate, the mountain property where Justin and I had grown up. The land had been in our family for generations. According to the paperwork in front of me, it had been used as collateral for a massive private loan. My father's signature was on the agreement, but it was not his handwriting. Kenneth had forged it. Then attached to the deed was a final collection notice from a shadow lending organization called the Blackwood Syndicate. The name alone made my stomach tighten. Even in legitimate business circles, the Blackwood was spoken about carefully. They financed desperate people at impossible rates and surrounded every deal with intimidating middlemen. The balance on the notice was $70 million. The deadline was 48 hours away. I sat down. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. My husband had risked my parents' home, stolen from my company, and placed my entire family inside a financial trap. Then I opened the medical file. I wish I had not. For 2 years, Kenneth and I had been trying to have a child. At least, I thought we were trying. I had visited clinics, followed schedules, taken medications, and cried in parking garages after another negative result. Kenneth had held me during those nights. He had told me we would keep trying. The document in my hand proved he had undergone a procedure 2 years earlier that made his promises impossible. My throat tightened. Then I found records suggesting he had also interfered with my fertility treatment through a corrupt clinic employee. That was the moment my heart truly broke. The affair hurt. The stolen money terrified me, but this was different. He had watched me blame myself. He had watched me wonder whether my body had failed me. And all that time, he knew the truth. I pressed both hands against my face and cried for exactly 3 minutes. Then I stood up. There would be time for grief later. I photographed every document, copied every digital file, and called the head of my private security team. By sunrise, I had lawyers, forensic accountants, and cybersecurity specialists working quietly across 3 locations. I told no one on the board. Not yet. The next evening, Rollins Global was scheduled to host its annual Star-lit gala in downtown Denver. Hundreds of investors, executives, journalists, and charitable partners would be there. Canceling the event would signal panic. So I went. I wore a silver evening gown and smiled for the cameras, while my mind counted down the hours until Blackwood's deadline. Justin stood near the center of the ballroom greeting investors. He did not know everything I had found. After the hospital, he had barely slept. Then the ballroom doors opened. At first I thought it was security. It was federal law enforcement. The music stopped. Agents crossed the room and arrested Justin in front of everyone. Guests backed away. Phones rose into the air. Cameras flashed. An agent announced that Justin was being detained in connection with a multi-million-dollar municipal fraud investigation. I watched my brother disappear through the doors in handcuffs. My phone vibrated. Restricted number, I answered. A smooth male voice said, "Good evening, Sabrina. Raymond Parsons, CEO of Parsons Dynamics, our most aggressive competitor. You framed my brother." Raymond laughed softly. He told me Rollins Global's stock was already collapsing. He knew about the Blackwood loan. He knew about the pressure on my family. He knew far too much. Then he gave me a choice. Resign by midnight, or transfer control of my voting shares to his holding company. In exchange, he claimed Justin's legal problem could disappear. "If you refuse," he said, "your family loses everything." The call ended. I stepped onto the balcony. Denver glittered below me, peaceful and distant. For one terrible minute, I believed Raymond had won. Then I remembered something my father had taught me when I was 17. When an opponent gives you only 2 choices, look for the third. I returned to the ballroom, ignored the whispers, and walked straight to my security chief. "Find out who inside our company has been communicating with Parsons." He nodded. "And Sabrina." "Less. You should know the board has called an emergency meeting for 8 tomorrow morning." Of course they had. The company was falling. My brother had been arrested. My husband was in the hospital. My family estate was under threat. To anyone watching from the outside, I looked finished. But I had one advantage. Everyone believed I was reacting emotionally. They had no idea I had been collecting evidence all night. By 4:00 a.m., my team found the first connection. A senior executive had been sending encrypted messages to Raymond Parsons. When they gave me the name, I read it twice. Marcus Salinas, Senior Director of Marketing. A man Kenneth had personally recruited. A man who sat beside me at every major board meeting. And suddenly, the affair, the money, the fraud, and Justin's arrest stopped looking like separate disasters. They looked like a coordinated attack. At 8 the next morning, the Rollins Global boardroom was full of fear disguised as authority. The stock had fallen overnight. News channels were running Justin's arrest on repeat. Several directors were already talking about stability, which is what frightened executives say when they want someone else removed. Arthur Bell, our oldest board member, spoke first. Sabrina, under the circumstances, we believe you should temporarily step aside. I looked around the table. Some avoided my eyes. Marcus Salinas did not. He looked calm. Too calm. I placed my tablet on the table. There will be no leadership vote this morning. Arthur frowned. You cannot simply stop the board. I can stop a fraudulent process. Marcus shifted in his chair. That was the first crack. My security team had secured the room for a confidential legal presentation. Phones were disabled from transmitting. The doors remained controlled by company security while counsel and federal contacts waited nearby. I wanted everyone focused on one thing: evidence. The screens behind me turned on. Encrypted messages appeared. A Marcus to Raymond Parsons. Payments? Instructions. The conversations showed Marcus passing proprietary information to Parsons, sabotaging municipal bids, and coordinating the placement of false evidence intended to implicate Justin. No one spoke. Marcus stood. This is fabricated. I advanced to the next screen. Security footage from Justin's garage. 2 men entered after midnight carrying a locked case. The same men appeared in payment records linked to a shell company. A shell company funded through Apex Capital. Marcus's face lost color. The FBI has the original files, I said. So do outside counsel and an independent forensic firm. This presentation is not the only copy. That mattered. I wanted everyone in that room to understand that destroying one laptop or threatening one person would solve nothing. Arthur slowly sat back. Marcus looked toward the door. A company security entered with law enforcement officers. As he was escorted out, he shouted that I did not understand who I was dealing with. Maybe he was right. Because one detail still bothered me. Apex Capital. The name kept pulling at a memory. I had seen it before, but not in a spreadsheet. Then I remembered. I was 10 years old, sitting in a treehouse on our mountain ranch with my uncle Randall. He had built the little structure himself. When he finished the roof, he looked across the valley and said, "We should call this place Apex. We're at the top of the world." Uncle Randall. My father's younger brother. The man who came to every Thanksgiving dinner. The man who brought me birthday gifts long after I became an adult. I felt sick. I asked my forensic accountant to trace Apex Capital beyond the first layer of ownership. 20 minutes later, he called back. The controlling trust was linked to Randall. Everything went quiet inside me. Raymond Parsons was not the mastermind. He was a weapon. Marcus was another weapon. Kenneth had been the inside access point. But Randall had been close enough to know every weakness our family had. My phone rang before I could call my father. Dad. His voice sounded tired. Sabrina, Randall is here. I stood. What does he want? He says he can solve the Blackwood debt. Of course he could. Because he had helped create it. Dad, do not sign anything. A pause. How did you know he brought papers? I was already walking toward the elevator. Because he wants the company. The drive to my parents' estate took less than an hour, but it felt endless. Snow covered the lawns in deep white sheets. 2 black SUVs were parked beside Randall's vehicle. Men I did not recognize stood near the entrance. I entered through the front doors. My father was in his study. Randall stood beside him holding a contract. He smiled when he saw me. There she is, he said. The famous CEO. My father looked confused and exhausted. On the desk was an agreement that would transfer a controlling block of family shares to Randall for a fraction of their value. In return, Randall promised to settle the Blackwood problem. Put the pen down. Dad? Randall's smile disappeared. He turned toward me. You are too late. Your brother is under federal investigation. Your husband is destroyed. Your stock is collapsing. Midnight is coming. I closed the study door behind me. No, Randall. Midnight is coming for you. He laughed. I placed a folder on the desk. Inside were the ownership records connecting him to Apex Capital, the payments to Marcus, and the communications that tied the sabotage to Parsons. Randall did not touch the papers. His eyes did. That was enough. You have nothing, he said. I have copies in 4 separate legal systems. For the first time, his confidence weakened. I told him the company's lenders had been notified. Our emergency financing plan was moving forward, and law enforcement had enough evidence to freeze transactions connected to Apex Capital. I was bluffing about how quickly every piece would happen, but not about the evidence. Randall stared at me, then at my father, then toward the men outside. "You always thought you were smarter than everyone," he said. "No," I replied. "I just finally realized how much you hated us." My father looked at his brother as though he had become a stranger. "Why?" Randall's expression hardened. "Because you inherited everything." That sentence explained decades. My father had inherited leadership of the company from their father. Randall had received money, property, and opportunity, but never the title he believed he deserved. Jealousy had aged into obsession, and Kenneth had given him the perfect path into our family. Randall reached for the contract. For 1 second, I thought he might try to force my father to sign. Instead, he tore the papers in half. "This is not over. It is in this house," I said. He left. My father sat silently for a long time. I wanted to believe the worst was behind us. Then my phone rang. "Justin." "Sabrina," he said, breathing hard. "Get back to the hospital." What happened? His next words froze me. "Someone just tried to kill Maya." I drove back towards St. Anthony Medical Center, with the storm pressing against my windshield. My mind went straight to Randall. Maya knew too much. She had been part of Kenneth's world, close enough to hear conversations and see names. If Randall believed she could connect him to the conspiracy, silencing her would make sense. When I reached the recovery floor, police officers were already there. Justin sat outside Maya's room, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. One of his hands was bleeding from where he had struck a wall. I sat beside him. "Tell me." "A man dressed like hospital staff went into her room during shift change," he said. "He tried to inject something into her AV. She woke up and fought him. A nurse came in. Security chased him, but he escaped." "Did Maya see his face?" "Only for a second." "Randall." Justin looked at me. I thought the same thing. Then a weak voice came from the hallway. It wasn't Randall. I turned. Kenneth was approaching in a motorized wheelchair with an officer nearby. He looked nothing like the polished executive I had married. His face was pale. His body was held carefully in place. The hospital injury had left him with serious nerve damage, and doctors had already told him that recovery would be uncertain and difficult. But his eyes were clear, worse than clear, satisfied. "It was me," he said. My stomach dropped. Justin stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. "You did what?" Kenneth looked at Maya's closed door. She was going to talk. I stepped between Justin and the wheelchair. "Kenneth, what did you do?" He said he had used money from a hidden digital account to hire someone to frighten Maya into silence. Then, with a twisted smile, he admitted the instructions had gone far beyond intimidation. The officer behind him immediately reached for his radio. I stared at the man I had loved for years. There was nothing left of that man. "You tried to have her murdered from a hospital bed." Kenneth's jaw tightened. "She ruined everything." "No." I said. "You ruined everything." He looked at me with pure hatred. "You think you won?" "I think this stopped being a game a long time ago." Kenneth laughed, then coughed. He turned his attention to Justin. "You still don't know, do you?" Justin's eyes narrowed. "Know what?" Kenneth leaned back. "The doctors ran blood work on Maya." My pulse slowed. He smiled. "She's pregnant." For several seconds, no one moved. The words did not make sense at first. Then they became the only thing in the hallway. Pregnant. I felt the old pain hit me in a place I thought had already gone numb. For 2 years, I had wanted a child. I had blamed myself. I had gone through treatment after treatment while Kenneth secretly made sure those attempts would fail. And now Maya was carrying a baby. Justin backed toward the wall. "How far along?" 8 weeks, Kenneth said. Justin closed his eyes. The timing created a question none of us wanted to say out loud. Was the baby Justin's, or Kenneth's? Kenneth watched our faces like a man enjoying a fire he had started. "I wanted her gone," he said. "I wanted all of you to feel what I lost." That was when the officer stepped forward. Kenneth's admission had changed his situation immediately. He was no longer merely a patient connected to a domestic scandal and financial investigation. He was now a suspect in an attempted murder conspiracy. As police took control of the wheelchair, Kenneth looked at me. "You did this to me." I did not answer quickly, because part of me knew my earlier act of revenge had helped set this chain of consequences in motion. "Finally," I said, "I made one reckless choice because I was angry. I will live with that. But everything you stole, every lie you told, every person you betrayed, and every crime you ordered belongs to you." He looked away. For once, Kenneth had no clever response. After he was taken from the floor, I went into Maya's room. She was awake. Bandages covered part of her body. Her face looked smaller than I remembered. Justin stayed near the door. Maya looked at me with tears in her eyes. Sabrina. I waited. I'm sorry, 2 words. Not enough. Maybe nothing would ever be enough. You were sleeping with my husband, I said. You helped hide things from Justin. You knew Kenneth was moving money. She started crying. I didn't know everything. What did you know? She told us Kenneth had promised her a new life. He said Rollins Global would collapse, Randall would take control, and Kenneth would receive enough money to disappear. She admitted she had passed along schedules and information she heard from Justin. Justin turned his face away. Every sentence hurt him. Maya continued. She had not understood that Justin would be framed for a federal crime until shortly before the gala. By then, she said, she was afraid to back out. Fear does not erase what you did. I told her. I know. For the first time that night, she sounded honest. Then she gave me one final piece of information. Kenneth had stored a second set of records outside our house. Not at a bank, not online. In a private storage facility under his mother Eleanor's name. I looked at Justin. The story was still not finished. Eleanor had worn a necklace purchased with stolen money. Now her name was attached to Kenneth's hidden archive. And if that archive contained what Maya believed it did, we could prove the entire conspiracy from beginning to end. By sunrise, I was standing inside a private storage facility outside Denver with 2 attorneys, a federal investigator, and a court-authorized access order. Eleanor arrived 10 minutes later. She was furious. You have no right. The investigator held up the paperwork. Today we do. Eleanor looked at me. For years, she had treated me like an outsider who had somehow stolen her son. Now she finally seemed to understand that Kenneth had dragged her into something much larger than family resentment. The storage unit opened. Inside were boxes. Dozens of them. Kenneth had kept records because men like Kenneth always believe records are power. Contracts, payment instructions, copies of forged signatures, private correspondence, backup drives, and photographs. One showed Randall and Raymond Parsons meeting at a ski resort 6 months earlier. Another showed Marcus entering Kenneth's office after midnight. There were documents connecting funds from Rollins Global to Apex Capital, then from Apex to Parsons, linked entities. There were also records of payments to the clinic employee who had interfered with my medical treatment. I had expected satisfaction. Instead, I felt grief. Seeing it all together meant there was no comforting explanation left. My marriage had been a structure built on deception. Eleanor stood beside me, silent. Then I found a handwritten note from Kenneth. It was not addressed to me. It was addressed to his mother. The note explained that once Randall controlled Rollins Global, Kenneth would receive enough money to relocate overseas. Eleanor would receive a property and an investment account. I handed it to her. She read it twice. Her face collapsed. He told me the money was legitimate. Did you ever ask where it came from? She did not answer. That was answer enough. I did not need to destroy Eleanor. Reality was doing that work for me. The federal investigator began cataloging evidence. By mid-morning, Justin's attorneys received confirmation that the government was re-examining the case against him. The planted evidence, surveillance footage, and Marcus's communications had changed everything. By afternoon, Justin was formally cleared of the fraud accusations. Raymond Parsons was arrested on charges connected to corporate espionage, conspiracy, and financial misconduct. Marcus began negotiating cooperation. Randall's accounts connected to Apex Capital were frozen while investigators traced the money. And Kenneth, already facing financial crimes, now faced the consequences of ordering violence against Maya. But we still had one problem. The Blackwood debt. The forged loan might eventually be invalidated, but eventually was not good enough. The deadline was that night, and people associated with Blackwood were still demanding payment. I returned to Rollins Global and called an emergency session with our banking partners. For months, I had been developing a merger with a Swiss robotics firm. Kenneth had tried to delay it because the transaction would bring new auditors into our books. Now I understood why. The merger had been nearly ready. All I needed was approval to accelerate the closing. For 6 hours, my legal and finance teams worked without stopping. At 10:03 p.m., the final signatures arrived. The company secured enough liquidity to protect the estate while our lawyers challenged the fraudulent loan. At 11:18 p.m., the funds were placed into a protected legal arrangement. At 11:51 p.m., the council informed Blackwood's representatives that the debt was disputed, secured, and under federal investigation. 9 minutes before midnight, the pressure broke. My parents' home was safe. I walked out of the conference room and found my father waiting in the hallway. He looked older than he had 2 days earlier. "You saved the company," he said. "No," I told him. "Was saved enough of it to rebuild." He smiled weakly. Then he hugged me. I had spent my whole life trying to prove I deserved a seat at his table. That night, I realized I no longer needed anyone to confirm it. Weeks passed. The public version of a scandal became a storm of headlines. Kenneth's affair was the smallest story. Reporters focused on the conspiracy, the corporate theft, planted evidence, and attempted takeover. Justin filed for divorce from Maya. He did not forgive her, and I did not blame him. But he also refused to treat the unborn child as an enemy. A paternity test would eventually answer the question of who the biological father was. Justin decided he would wait for facts before making any permanent decision. Maya agreed to cooperate with investigators. Her testimony did not erase her betrayal, but it helped reveal how Kenneth and Randall had manipulated people around them. Eleanor moved out of the home Kenneth had purchased for her. Through her attorney, she agreed to return assets that investigators believed had been bought with stolen funds. I saw her only once after that. She looked at me and said, "I should have stopped him." I replied, "You should have asked questions when the answers were still small." She lowered her eyes. Randall fought every accusation. He claimed the payments were business transactions. He claimed Kenneth had acted independently. He claimed Marcus misunderstood instructions. But the evidence kept tightening around him. The man who once sat at our Thanksgiving table became the subject of federal charges and civil actions. His reputation disappeared faster than his money. Raymond's company removed him. Marcus testified. Kenneth was transferred from the hospital into secure custody under medical supervision. As for me, I began therapy. That surprises people when I tell this story. They expect revenge to feel like victory. It does not. Justice can feel like victory. Survival can feel like victory. But revenge by itself is a fire. It burns the person you aim it at, and if you are not careful, it burns you too. I had made one furious decision after discovering the affair, and the consequences became far more serious than I had intended. I could not undo it, so I decided I would never again confuse anger with control. Real control was what came afterward. Documenting the truth, protecting my family, following the money, putting evidence in the hands of people who could act on it, and rebuilding what Kenneth, Randall, Marcus, and Raymond had tried to take from us. Still, one final question remained. What would I do when I saw Kenneth again? 3 months after the night the hospital called me, I saw Kenneth for the final time. The meeting took place in a secure legal facility in Denver. He was there for a deposition connected to the corporate theft and the attempted attack on Maya. He looked smaller. Not physically, emotionally. The confidence that had once filled every room was gone. For years, Kenneth had controlled people by controlling what they knew. He kept separate stories for me, for Maya, for his mother, for Randall, for the board, and for himself. Now every story had been placed side by side, and none of them matched. He looked at me across the table. "Did you come to enjoy this?" "No." "You expect me to believe that?" "I came because I wanted to see whether you were finally capable of telling the truth." He gave me a bitter smile. "What truth?" I leaned forward. "That you had everything," he frowned. "You had a wife who trusted you. You had access to a family that welcomed you. You had a career, money, a future, and you traded all of it for control." Kenneth's expression hardened. "You always thought you were better than me." "No. I thought you were my partner." That hurt him more. I could see it. For years, I had imagined that if someone destroyed my life, I would want to destroy theirs in return. But sitting across from Kenneth, I realized his life was already ruined by the person he had chosen to become. I did not need to add anything. The legal cases would continue. Judges and juries would decide the punishments. Civil courts would recover what they could. Doctors would handle his physical condition. My revenge was no longer about causing pain. My revenge was refusing to let him define what happened to me. I stood. Kenneth stared at the table. "Sabrina." I stopped. Was any of it real? For the first time, he sounded afraid. I thought about our wedding, the road trips, the nights we planned a nursery, the mornings he made coffee before I woke up. Maybe some moments had been real. Maybe that was the cruelest part. "I was real," I said. That was enough. Then I walked away. The year that followed was difficult, but it was mine. Rollins Global recovered slowly. We changed our governance structure, added independent audits, and removed the systems Kenneth and Marcus had exploited. Forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same thing. I eventually forgave her enough to stop waking up angry. But trust, once destroyed, does not automatically grow back. Randall's betrayal changed our family forever. My father stopped speaking his brother's name. On the first Thanksgiving after the scandal, there was an empty chair at the table. No one moved it. I think we needed to see it. A reminder that betrayal often comes from the person close enough to know exactly where to cut. Eleanor returned the diamond pendant. I sold it through a legal recovery process, and every dollar that came back to me went into a fund supporting women who needed independent legal and financial help while leaving controlling relationships. That was the first time something connected to Kenneth made me feel peaceful. People still ask whether I regret what I did after discovering the affair. Yes, I regret acting from rage. I regret believing humiliation would make me feel whole. It did not. But I do not regret opening the safe. I do not regret following the money. I do not regret standing in that boardroom when everyone expected me to surrender. And I do not regret telling Randall to leave my father's house. The people who tried to destroy my family believed strength meant intimidation. I learned that real strength is quieter. It is keeping copies. It is asking one more question. It is walking into a room full of people who have already decided you are finished and calmly placing the truth on the table. It is knowing when to fight and knowing when to walk away. If I had to summarize my story in one sentence, it would be this: I thought I was uncovering an affair, but I was actually uncovering a conspiracy designed to steal my family, my future, and even my faith in myself. What began with betrayal became an investigation. The investigation became a war for my family's company. That war exposed a rival CEO, a trusted executive, my own uncle, my husband, and people who had helped them hide the truth. In the end, the greatest victory was not watching them lose. It was realizing that I had survived without becoming like them. And here is what I learned. First, betrayal rarely arrives alone. One lie often protects another. When something feels wrong, do not ignore the pattern. Second, anger can make you reckless. The first revenge I chose created consequences I never intended. Evidence, patience, legal action, and clear thinking became far more powerful than any impulsive act. Third, never allow someone else to make you doubt your own body, mind, or worth just because they speak with confidence. Kenneth used my desire for a family to control me. The moment I found the truth, I began taking myself back. Fourth, family loyalty should never require blindness. Randall shared my blood, but that did not make him safe. Trust should be supported by actions, not titles. Fifth, the justice is not always dramatic. Sometimes justice is a bank account frozen, a false charge dismissed, a contract canceled, a home protected, a person finally walking away. Today, when I stand at the windows of my office and look across Denver, I do not see the city I conquered. I see the life I reclaimed. My scars are still there. But scars are not instructions to stay afraid. They are proof that something tried to break you and failed. So if you are listening to this because someone has betrayed you, remember this. Do not hand them the power to choose who you become next. Choose carefully. Choose the truth. Choose your future. And if justice comes, let it come clean. Thank you for watching and staying with me until the end of this story. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story. Your support helps us continue bringing you more dramatic, emotional, and unforgettable stories. And remember the line I carried with me after everything was over. They thought betrayal would be the end of my story. It was only the moment I finally became the author of it